Welcome. In this class, I'm going to be talking to you about the spiritual calling, which is the very first step, the very first little spark of light or heralder of new beginnings on our spiritual awakening journeys. I'm going to present this class and all future classes in a bite-sized format, so it gives you the chance to learn and absorb without getting overwhelmed. As you know, and I'm sure you've probably experienced this many times before, there's just so much information out there that it's easy to hear a lot but take in very little. So these classes are going to be short and sweet, but they're also going to be dense and rich, and they're designed to give you the chance to listen, soak in and integrate any outer and inner material that may come up. Okay, so now we'll head right into the central question. How do you accept your spiritual calling? Well, whether that is walking a new path or accepting one of your soul gifts, or listening to your intuition and following your heart, or saying goodbye to an old chapter of your life and beginning a new one, the first thing we need to understand is that spiritual callings can happen at literally any point in life. And they don't just happen once. They can happen many times throughout the course of our lives, because the spiritual journey is cyclical. It's spiralic, it's seasonal. I equate the spiritual calling to the transition between winter and spring. It's that liminal twilight space where our way of life no longer works for us. We might feel stuck or empty or lost, and we yearn for something more. And that's where the spring-like energy comes in. There's this seed of longing which is beginning to sprout within us for something more meaningful, something more fulfilling, more soul nourishing. So feeling stuck and longing for something more, or feeling like one chapter is closing and another is beginning, are the two main signs of experiencing a spiritual calling. Of course, sometimes spiritual callings happen after a huge trauma of some kind that shakes us to awake us. Sometimes someone we love might be dying, or maybe we lose our jobs, our health, our relationship, or anything that really threatens the foundation of our sense of self and vitality. For others, spiritual callings might happen after going through a beautiful, blissful, mystical experience of some kind, or on the other hand, a desolate, dark night of the soul. I know for me, my spiritual calling came after the very foundation of my life began to crumble. My whole inherited belief system just began to shatter, and I was raised in a very strict fundamentalist Christian household ever since I was born, essentially. And there came this point where I just felt like my soul was dying and withering away, being in that kind of environment with its abusive ideologies. Of course, what I later discovered is that the soul doesn't die, it's just that we lose touch with it. And that's what was happening to me. I was becoming more and more disconnected from my true source of vitality. So anyway, what ended up happening is that I entered a dark night of the soul where everything felt empty and desolate, and it felt like I was falling through a black void, because I started to see through all of these fear-based beliefs that I had been brainwashed to see, to believe. And that is what sparked my spiritual calling. So how do we accept our spiritual calling, whatever that may be? Firstly, we need to be aware that we've had a spiritual calling. How do we become aware? There are many ways to find out whether we've had a spiritual calling or not. The two main powerhouse practices, which I strongly advocate, are meditation and journaling. Meditation is what I call a yin practice, in the sense that it's open, receptive, passive, and it helps our mind and heart to become clear. It helps you to reconnect with your soul. And journaling is what I call a yang practice, because it's active, engaged, and it requires you to internally contemplate your thoughts and feelings, which then creates a sense of higher perspective and understanding. So these two practices, meditation and journaling, are like the yin and yang that perfectly complement each other. And I'll be sharing a simple meditation practice and some journaling questions surrounding the spiritual calling, which I'll include in the resources section of this class for you to download. Finally, once you've realized that yes, you are indeed experiencing a spiritual calling, there are 4 qualities that, in my experience, need to be slowly cultivated within you. And these are trust, surrender, intuitive knowing, and discernment. Without trusting the call of your soul, you won't be able to surrender and let go of old patterns. And trusting and letting go need to be directed by your own deepest wisdom and intuitive knowing, or what I call the soul's voice. But sometimes we can confuse the voice of the soul with the voice of the mind, and that's where discernment, or learning to judge clearly truth from lies, comes into the picture. We'll be exploring these 4 qualities in the next class. But for now, go ahead and download the additional resources for this class, and I'll see you in the next one. Much love.